like to call this meeting of the Architecture Review Board and City Planning Commission. And it's Thursday, October 3rd, 2024 at 6 p.m. Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Lucky.
Here.
Hunter. Here. Stocko.
Here.
Boardman.
Here.
Giesland.
Here.
Meinel.
Here.
Schroeder.
Here. We've got the minutes of the August 19th, 2024 meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review those? Any changes or?
Move to be approved as written.
Second. We got a motion and a second. Any questions, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. We've got 3 items for the Planning Commission. The first is Jacob Bowes at 32 South Wisconsin Street for an HPC Certificate of Appropriateness. Is this the first one of these we've had since the HPC was redone? Does somebody want to describe the process to us so we're all on the same page?
Sure, I can try my best.
Yeah.
So what you have before you tonight is an application that was filed. It has been presented to the HPC. This applicant is looking to do some facade improvements, paint the building, make it look a whole lot nicer than it looks right now. Because that was in the Historic Preservation District. They applied with the new Historic Preservation Committee. They did approve this. I think the minutes are in the packet as well as their drafted certificate of appropriateness. The second step and final step in this process would be to get approval from the Plan Commission.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions or discussion about this item? No. I would entertain a motion. Motion approved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Then we've got Dan Pierce and Katie Duckworth at 1 West Walworth Street, again for an HPC Certificate of Appropriateness.
Yep, and they are, again, just doing some cleanup. They want to do some tuck pointing of the brick facade and get that restored.
Great.
I move be approved.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Then we've got Creekside Community Development, Paul Van Hinkelum for a vacant lot on South Lincoln Street at the intersection of East Deer Road, an SIP application, discussion and recommendation.
Can we start? Hi, my name is Paul Van Hinkelum. I'm the engineer for Toronto Builders. Just want to recap a couple things before we start, just so. Again, Creekside Development's about 70 acres parcel out, and you've seen some of the activity out there now north of the DMV on Lincoln. The plan, the GFP was approved last year, about a year ago, and it called for 847 apartment units and 2 large commercial sites. The developers agreement talked about doing it in 3 phases. I think it was subject to market conditions, but Toronto is committed to build the first 3 buildings as soon as possible, which would be 2 apartment buildings and the clubhouse. And we'll make the connection over at Getson for the water. We still don't have a permit for the crossing for the sewer, for the railroad crossing yet. I know you guys have been working on that. Adam's been working on that. So, but part of the developers agreement called for a start in the first phase, starting in 1/1/24. So we're a little behind. We have started grading. We got an intermittent grading plan that got approved. We've been doing a lot of grading. The commercial sites are all graded and ready to go. And we're working on the sites kind of the back. We had some material come in from both Centralia and from some other sites that Toronto is developing now. So again, what we're looking for tonight is SIP approval. Now, I know some of the staff has not recommended approval, and there's a lot of items left. There's a lot of engineering items left. This is a big project. We're trying to design the whole site, which is probably, when you build this thing out, it's probably a 10 to 12-year project right now. Staff's been very helpful, very good, all through the process. And if you review your ordinance 17.4-24E, talks about SIP approval. So we think we made all those conditions. There's a couple items we'd like to discuss a little more detail tonight with the Planning Commission because we'd like your input. Some of those regards playground equipment and some of the exterior finishings of the units. So we're going to talk about that. We still don't have all the plans approved from the staff. Naomi's been very good, Mike's been very good, Matt. Allison's been helping with the planning, so we have some other items. I think we can get some of the planning items more appropriate for the Planning Commission. I'd like to go over those tonight with you. I think you've seen Allison's review letter. And our whole goal here is to get our building plans submitted to the state. It's about a 2 to 6 month approval process for the state approvals for this type of plans. We think if we submitted them today, we'd still be a couple months before we could get a basement start. So we're trying to stay on schedule. And we think the first 2 buildings, which would be the ones right at the end of the cul-de-sac and the clubhouse, is what we'll call, what we're looking for today is to get those building plans submitted and get started on those. And these buildings take about 2 years to build. If you've been by the site that we just got approved in Delavan, you can see some of those buildings going up, some of those type of buildings going up. It's about a 2-year process. It takes a while. And the way Toronto does, and they're up to about 2,000 units around the area now. They build the foundations, the first foundation, and then they move to the second foundation, they start framing up. The last couple frames came out of Great Lakes Components. The ones over in Delavan are Great Lakes Components are built here right in Elkhorn. They have a lot of vendors here in Elkhorn, the heating guy and things like that. So it's really a nice project for the city. So that's what we're looking for tonight. We're looking for SIP approval. We're not trying to bypass the staff by any means. We think all the engineering plans need to be approved at some point. Not a requirement of SIP. Allison had some comments, and Tony, one of the brothers, Tony and Tommy Larson, are both here tonight. And Tony's got a couple items. I think you got the playground, Tony? You got a plan of the playground? So one of Allison's comments was that we didn't have the playground equipment, and that would be located up near the other recreational facilities. And I think it was, so that's what we're looking at for tonight. And again, that's along with the tennis courts, volleyball courts, basketball courts and such. But we didn't show it on the site plan because Ryan forgot to put it in the site plan, but we'll put that up near that area. And those will be so we want you to think about that. Allison also mentioned the foundation plannings. I think it came from, Joel's not here, it came from Joel or somebody about security along the buildings. You have an ordinance that requires certain landscape items and amounts and things like that. So we met that ordinance, and some of those are required. Some of those items are along the foundation. Remember, these have 2 stories apartment or parking, undercover parking, and one's on the first floor, one's on the lower level. So I think Joel was, or somebody, Allison or Joel, was worried about security along those because they thought there'd be apartment units there, and there's not. That's a garage level on the first floor where our plantings are. And all the buildings are gonna have security cameras. So we're gonna have staff 24/7 somewhere on site. So we don't think it's a security issue from the standpoint of anybody accessing these apartments from the outside. So that's why we showed them there, and we think that's appropriate. It looks better, it looks a little classier, you don't have the foundations exposed to the grass, you got foundation plantings around the whole building. So that's what we're doing there. So we'd like you to think about that. Site plan was approved by the GFP. I know Allison mentioned that she wanted setbacks. We can certainly show those on the site plan. But the site plan is the site plan. The location has not changed since the GDP approval. So we think, we'd be happy to show that if that's what you want, but we didn't show them on there. Okay, then we have a maintenance building, which is kind of nice. You don't normally see that in these apartment buildings, but we'll have on-site staff. And we have some parking in front of that maintenance building, which we think is for staff. We don't anticipate anybody in the apartment buildings parking over there. I guess they could if somebody wanted to drive that far and things like that. But that's so the staff doesn't take parking spots normally for the owners or the renters of the apartments. So, and then that maintenance building will have a water and sewer, and we'll have a bathroom in there. Did we submit the plans of that? Tony?
Just the
You don't have a set of plans, we'll get you a set of plans.
Not the
Interior plans of that maintenance building. But I have a restroom facility basically for staff. Okay? We don't have the signing submitted yet. We think we may have to come back for that. We'd like you to look at that signing when we get it done. We think that's an appropriate thing for the planning commission to review and approve. So, and according to the ordinance, that's one of your responsibilities. So we'll get you that maybe in a week or two when the sign-in guy gets his drawings done. So, and the next thing, I want Tony to go over exterior material. You got those two, don't you, Tony? As you get that stuff, just remember, Geronimi is one of these rare builders. They develop it, they own it, they build them, and they maintain them the whole time. So it's all their staff. So, like I said, Tony, they've been somewhere around 2,000 units in the area now, and they've got the system kind of down. And Tony's worked with some different materials, so why don't you tell them what those are, Tony? I can't see them.
Sure. If you really want to see what this building looks like, if you drive over to Elkhorn, we're using the exact same colors over there that we plan on using here. We've got
Well, you want to start with the roofing?
this is the shingle that we're using currently over there that I plan on using, over here. And then, we've got the facade broke up with, basically the first 10 feet, the underground parking is all gonna be stone. It's a mix of, two different kinds of stone. We kind of use this stone, a ledge stone, for the front, gable area. And then we use this castle rock, which is more of a square stone, a flat stone, just to break it up and cover the whole first level with that. And then we'll go to, smart siding, same color here. And then, the gables are broke up with white corner boards, and then also we have shakes on a lot of the gables.
And that's similar to the one you just finished in East Troy, isn't it?
No,
Different?
East Troy's red, this one's blue.
Oh, different color.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what they're looking at for exteriors, and those were and then Allison also mentioned about the ADA. We've got a couple buildings in the back, like buildings 10 and 11, I believe, that are called for, targeted for seniors over 50 housing. We meet the ADA requirements. One thing about Toronto, when they're short parking or short something or something changes, they make those changes because, again, they're operating and owning these buildings. So we think by the time we get back there to builders, maybe 5 or 6 years. So if the ADA requirement change, we'll add those ADA parkings or whatever it needs to meet the requirements. Or if they think the market's changed and we need to add more units, but currently we believe we meet the ADA requirements. So again, what we're looking at is, SIP approval, which if you meet your ordinance, we think we meet those requirements. We're not asking for engineering plans approval, we're not asking for, we still think we need to work out some of those issues, but we think we're at a point where we'd like to start submitting things for building plans and, get the project moving, at least from this standpoint. We have 2 commercial sites, we got somebody very active on the first site. We think they're gonna be coming back very soon with their SIP request too. So, a lot happening out there, we think it's a nice, obviously, so do you, we approved the GDP. So, took a while, we moved a lot of dirt out there if you've noticed. So, those 2 pads in the front are ready to go. And we've got this certified survey map approved, talked to Welcome Matt, we're gonna get ready to get our sewer and water extension permits submitted and such. Again, staff's been very helpful. The plans are 140 pages right now, the intersection plans are somewhere around 60, 70 pages. We think we're expecting state approval on the intersection plans within a week or 2. And then, I know the city probably wanna look at those too. You end up owning that, correct, Matt? You own the intersection. So you need to look at those too. So, and then the other issue that came up is, and I know Adam's been working on this, the developer's agreement says there's 2 access points. Everybody wants to use Getson. The city has to obtain permission from the railroad commissioner for that access, and basically working through the railroad. I know we've had several discussions with the railroad. We've hired a consultant, Doug Wood, who used to work at the commission and is helping us in the city to get that access approved. If not, we have, under the DOT intersection agreement, we have a temporary, it's called a temporary, but it's gonna be a full access, kind of next to the bus barn. And that's what they're using now for access on the site. And if we don't have access for Getson by a year and a half, when we're looking for occupancy, we will make that paved and make that secondary access. If Getson comes through, we'll abandon that one at that point, but we wanna get Getson done. We are making a connection for the water at Getson, so the water will be looped through the site, whether Getson gets done or not. Now, if Getson doesn't get approved, and there's no hope to getting Getson approved, which I think you've got some options on that you're working through, we may have to modify the intersection for Lincoln and Creekside Boulevard at a later date, but we've talked to the DOT about that, we'd have to make some changes to that access point in the north. But if you read the developer's agreement, that's kind of what it says. It says Getson is what we want to do. If we can't get Getson and we got no other choices, we're going to the access at the, next to the bus barn. So if anybody has any questions, I got everybody here tonight, we could probably answer anything you have.
Allison, do you have comments?
Sure, I can go into it. So Paul gave a good rundown of where they're at with the project currently and everything they've been working on. As he mentioned, they were before you about a year ago in a couple of days for their GDP approval. And so we thought this was a good time to, get it going, get them back. We're not ready for approval yet. I believe there's several things that need to be worked out, added to the plans. Unfortunately, Kapoor can speak to this as well, but unfortunately, the plan set that we had received a couple of weeks ago was altered, and we received a new submittal late last week. And so Kapoor has not been able to review those plans or had adequate time to cross-reference them to the plans that you're looking at tonight. So that will all need to be done in time. I have 14 items on my staff review that need to be addressed as well. And I'd like to see those added into the plan and, versus a conditional approval.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Naomi, you wanna?
Thank you. Yeah, I apologize. Usually you see a review letter in your packet. We had received a complete submittal on the 30th of August, which is the one you're looking at. And as Paul pointed out, this project is pretty complicated. There's a lot of pieces to it. So we were working through our review. We had met with the city, and we were finalizing it for the packet when we got a new submittal late last week. So I felt it more appropriate maybe to give you the timeline that's in your packet of the ways that we have been, staff and the Creekside team has been working together to kind of come to a final SIP review and approval. So in the packet, I won't go through all the dates, but when we received the submittal that met the deadline for this meeting, which was August 30th, we realized at about September 18th that we were going to be unable to recommend approval. So we sent out an email with some of the top items, and I think the biggest one for us is the ingress-egress locations. There's not a single ingress-egress location that we're comfortable approving with this plan. And since phase 1 needs 2 ingress-egress locations, that in and of itself doesn't enable us to recommend approval. So that the Getson crossing is dependent upon the railroad. We don't have a profile there. We don't have much of the design. There's some comments related to the water proposed under Getson. There's a culvert under Getson that's not shown in the profile. So there's some few questions at the Getson connection. And then, of course, the intersection, that's a lot of work. We reached out to DOT, Art Bauman of DOT, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and he hadn't received a submittal since April 9th. So we don't anticipate approval on the intersection for quite some time. And then the third entrance is that north drive, which DOT has provided very detailed guidance on what that drive should look like, and which would include 3 lanes. There would be a right turn, a left turn, and an incoming lane. And so far, the plans have not reflected that. So in and of itself, the ingress-egress locations are still unknown, not able to be approved. And then we have some comments. Stormwater management plan is yet to be approved. The inconsistencies between the plan and the modeling. The culverts proposed don't match the modeling. The culverts are single pipes on the plans, twin culverts in the model. So just kind of cleaning up some of the details on the plan sheets before we can recommend approval. I have looked at about 80% of the plan submitted last week, so I anticipate I can provide detailed comments next week for them.
And the only thing we're saying, I agree with anything Naomi said, that there's a lot of information on these plans. We're not designing Getz until we get a crossing approved there, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. And if you look at your ordinance, you go back and look at the ordinance, and I read it again today, it doesn't say we need to do planar profiles and stuff. It says we need to show the location of the utilities, which we did. So we fully expect we need to work with the engineers and the planners and the staff to address all those items to get permits like DNR permits and building permits and things like that. But I don't think we need to get that to get an SIP approval from the planning commission, or at least a recommendation to the city council for SIP approval, because we think we meet your ordinance. So, like I said, we're looking at you're looking at $125 to $150 million project out here, and there's going to be a lot of things that keep moving till we get done in 5 to 10 years. So, and there'll be things that change, and there'll be things that are wrong in these plans that we don't know about and get approved, and we'll have to address later on because I've never done a project where somebody put together a perfect set of plans. So, but that's not the point. The point is, we need to have SIP approval. We got some people looking at, well, what's the guarantee you're gonna go ahead? And that's kind of what we're saying to these commercial people. It says, yeah, you're gonna have all these apartments back here. And everybody believes it, and everybody's pushing in the same directions, but, you know, some of these things gotta happen together. You know, if we gotta wait to get every T crossed and I dotted on the improvement plans before we get an SIP approval, and then we gotta submit plans to the state for the building plans, that's another year or two. And, you know, the panels we kinda expected to use on this site before, I mean, it just took a long time, but they're now down in Delavan going up, so, we're trying to move this as fast as we got deadlines, and we know the city wants us to move fast, and we wanna move fast. And I understand, you know, Matt and Naomi and Mike's position and Allison, that they wanna get everything correct and right before they recommend approval. But I think SIP approval is not engineering plans approval. So we're looking here tonight to get SIP, a recommendation for an SIP approval.
Can I raise a comment? I mean, when does it come back to Plan Commission or Council for engineering approval then? It seems like this is the last, I mean, this is the site improvement plan, right? This is the final step. It wouldn't come back to Plan Commission.
Correct. I want to clarify that. This is the last and final step. It would not come back to Plan Commission.
Well, we want to come back to planning commission, we still gotta get the staff to approve everything, get permits and things like that.
Right. And I understand what you're saying, Paul, but when we approve an SIP approval, that is our final step. So our engineering review goes hand in hand with that. We need everything in order to be able to recommend approval for the SIP. The plan in front of you tonight, if the SIP was approved, that's it. That would go down as this is the development. This is everything that is approved. And we're not there yet.
Even if it doesn't say in the ordinance, you need all that stuff. You're saying we have to get everything done.
Correct, because this
Even if
is
it
the
doesn't
time
have-
that
even if
our
it's required in the
engineering,
ordinance, it's not required in the ordinance, though, right?
correct, this is the time that our engineering firm completes their complete review of engineering. It is not typical for a project to be approved at Plan Commission and then have engineering review come second to that.
I would agree with Allison's comment. In fact, many communities require full construction plans ready for work in the ground at the SIP level.
So we should have just came back with phase one, is what you're telling us?
Well, that was our recommendation.
What's that?
That was our recommendation, is to focus on phase one.
So we didn't, it showed you all the other plans for all the other stormwater and all the other sewer and water.
That was our right, Adam? We
But
had
it-
multiple meetings.
But
so
the
we
ordinance just
recommended-
says utility locations, it doesn't say engineering plans, correct? I'm just reading your ordinance.
Right, you're reading our SIP ordinance, however, what I'm stating is that our full and complete engineering review also goes hand in hand with our SIP approval. This is the time for the city to review the plans in full. It is not standard protocol to approve an SIP and then approve final engineering. They go hand in hand in the city of Elkhorn.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to mention too that this isn't the first time that we've talked about this. I mean, you've known this, Paul, for quite some time. We expected full completed plans.
I'm just trying to keep the project moving here. I'm not trying, I've been doing this a long time. I've been working at Elkhorn a long time, and everybody kind of knows me. I've never misled anybody, and I don't think you think I do. But I'm just trying to keep this project moving, and there's a lot of moving parts. And we got deadlines that when the developer's agreement says we gotta do certain things at a certain time. So the ordinance doesn't say that, but I know we've had this discussion before, so I'm just trying to does the plan commission have a problem? I mean, are they gonna deal with the plan of profiles and the typos and all that stuff?
I guess my concern is that, you know, we come back like 10 years from now or 15 years from now, and then someone wants to look at the SIP, they're not complete. You know, then you were piecemealing things, in my opinion. I mean, I guess it's up to the plan commission, but that's my concern.
In fact, I would say that the plans, if these were to go down as SIP plans, they would show potentially non-compliant with the ordinance. I'm not comfortable with the stormwater management plan. The culverts could, at one culvert instead of twin culverts, could back up water on adjacent properties. Water main might be, there's call-outs that show, I think the call-outs are wrong, but the call-outs are on the plan that show water main is only, or not main, but services, fixtures are 1 foot or 2 feet below the surface. So I think those are all things that need to be cleaned up. I don't think that's intended, but I do not want this to be the SIP plan that's recorded with the city, because it could look like that is in non-compliant with our ordinance.
And I just want to say too, I mean, Paul, I agree with you and everything you said about us working together and how great this project is for the city. I just am concerned that we're rushing things with the plan set that's not complete, so.
How long would it take to get it complete?
Well, I don't think it's gonna take long, but, you know, you only meet once a month or so. I'm just trying to, I'm not trying, and again, we're not trying to bypass anybody. But I suspect you guys aren't that interested in the sizing of the culverts between the two stormwater ponds.
Well,
And
I'm
those are
not, but they are.
I understand, and we're not trying not to
That's
do
why
that.
they're here, you know?
We're not trying not to do that, but if we could get some, you know, some approval so we could at least get the plans submitted for because those take months to get approved by the state, and we'd like to get going. I just, that's where we're at. And I don't think starting these two buildings, plans while or at least submitting the plans, it takes years to build these buildings, is gonna affect anything on those engineering plans. I just don't.
Do you, have you submitted for the water crossing at the railroad yet?
For the what?
The water crossing at Gibson? Have you submitted to the railroad for the water
No.
crossing?
No. And originally, you know, we thought we'd have a crossing, doing the whole crossing there with the road, and we're not doing the road now. So, but we talked to the utilities there, and we talked to the railroad crossings they don't take that long for a boring, jack and board.
When was your last submittal to DOT, out of curiosity? Because you said you thought you'd get approval within a week?
Last week,
You submitted last week?
yeah, I copied the city and Art responded and copied the city and he had comments on pavement markings only.
Do Plan Commission members have any questions?
Well, I'm sure that all of us want to see the project move forward as fast as it can. And, one building, two buildings, whatever it might be. But from where I sit, I think that we have Allison and we have our engineering group here to guide us to make decisions. And at this point, I think that I'm going to definitely stay on their side, and they're not happy with what we're presented tonight. So I think we just have to work with the city again and get those things done. I mean, they're not hiding anything for sure that they're asking for. So.
I think, going back to what you said too, if you think you can get this done, some of the things put together in a month and submit this, and let's have another meeting. I mean, I know it's another month, but, it sounds like nobody wants to submit something that's incomplete, so.
We meet twice a month. I don't
Yeah.
know if we could have a special meeting or not.
How long do you guys normally need, once you have submittal, to review?
We've been doing 2-week turnarounds, but ordinance gives us 4,
Okay.
so.
Okay. Yeah, we've got there are tentative meetings on October 17th and November 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
So, right now.
Basically, the problem is the last plan was only submitted on the 30th of September, right? And you haven't had a chance to review the entire plan. I guess what is an estimate of doing that you two could make a decision?
I already have some review comments that I talked with Ryan Cardinal about. So he could start looking at those, and I would finish my final review next week.
With that being said, I know that the submittal that they submitted did not include any of my review comments, so I know those will need to be added in as well. But as Naomi stated, she's already working through it. As soon as I see my comments addressed in the staff or the site plans, then it will not take me long to see them and know that they're in there.
So what are we looking at for real time on our side? Could we have it done by October 17th?
On our side, well, what I would say is that right now the hypothetical ball is in Creekside's court. So we need to have plans back that address all of our comments and concerns. Once we get those, I think as staff, we can work together and get a review turnaround time between 3 weeks. And then we can get it back on a plan commission meeting, the next available plan commission meeting.
So that would be hopefully November 3rd, right?
Correct, just as long as we get plans
Right.
back and continue to just work back and forth with Creekside and
Yeah.
Cardinal.
Okay.
Naomi, how long did you say you thought it'd take? You said you were about 80% of the way through. How long do you think it'd take you to finish?
I'll finish next week.
Will these plans address the issues of water, drainage, and how people will be getting in and out of the area in 2 weeks?
Well, I think Naomi could probably comment on, she's 80% done and she expects to be done completely by.
I think that was a question for Creekside.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right, she said 1 week for 3 times now. I'm just saying that, why should we hurry up to get you in if we don't know how people are going to get in and out of the area? You're not sure on whether the water's gonna go through, you haven't been approved on that, and there's still a question about drainage. Will
Well,
that be answered by the next time that you're ready to submit for us to meet?
just so we're clear, we're certainly, people are gonna get in and out. I mean,
You have 3 accesses, correct?
what's that?
You have 3 accesses right now, you're thinking?
Yeah, we'll have 2 access. We got 2 accesses now.
Right, but I'm saying that the north side that you're talking about is listed for 3 lanes, or was addressed at 3 lanes, but it's only showing 2.
Yeah, the DOT approval, subject to them reviewing the plans and approve it, and the city approving the plans, stated that that's gonna be a temporary access, and we can build the Creekside access, Creekside Boulevard in Lincoln, as planned with that as a temporary. Now, if Getson doesn't go through, then we gotta come back and modify that intersection, which we've agreed to do. But it's gonna take probably a year before we know if Getson's gonna go through. So there'll be an access there. While we build these buildings, we wanna make sure there's 2 access points for the emergency vehicles and things like that. So that access is gonna be there, and we won't abandon that until the Getson one goes in, and if it doesn't, we'll have to improve that one more. But there'll be a secondary access there all the time, day one.
So with respect to the access, since 2 accesses are required for phase 1, per the GDP approval.
For occupancy.
Yeah, for occupancy,
Yeah.
but per the GDP approval.
Correct.
We have been very specific that if they're going to apply for phase 1 or a full SIP, that we need design on those intersections. And it came up at a staff meeting. This is an area where a lot of BZ's work is gonna go through. And he needs to also understand what that might look like, because he's gotta make, his time schedule is really crunched. He's gotta get A to Z, and it takes it can take a year. So he's also asked that North Drive be designed. And we need it designed. If you don't put it in because it becomes a temporary access, fine, it's not in. You have Getson. But it needs to be designed so that we understand how the site will function if the railroad doesn't approve the Getson access. And then we can move forward with the electrical as well.
Let me understand what you're saying, because that's not what the developer's agreement says, but let me say, you're saying that you want us to design that secondary, like Getson doesn't go in, you want us to do that secondary access design now, even if we're not gonna build it because we don't know about Getson. That's what you're asking for?
My understanding that the conversation of Getson and the railroad was looking less than optimal. I don't know if Adam wants to comment on that. So if you need 2 accesses, I would put my eggs in that basket and design that. BZ needs it for his electrical services. And once that he puts those in, and he doesn't want the city to have to pay to move those, if that full design goes in for that entrance.
I'm sorry, that doesn't make a lot of sense, because if we do it that way, we design that, and he puts his electrical based on that, and then Getson goes in, he's gonna have to move them then. Because he built it to another design.
No, you just would use it as a temporary.
The developer's agreement says, we all anticipate Getson. If you read the developer's agreement and the ordinance, it says we're all anticipating Getson going in. And if it doesn't, we will have to modify that. But Adam's probably got more information on it than I do, but they've got other options for the Getsons if they have some issues with other crossings. So I anticipate Getson going in right now.
So will you
So
provide us with a
you want us
design
to
for
design
Getson?
that whole thing and go get another DOT permit for something that's probably not gonna happen.
So will you provide us with a design for Getson with the SIP plans? I mean, we have to have 2 accesses designed.
You gotta have to, we're not building Getson in the first phase anyways, that's what the developer's agreement says. So why are we worried about that when we wanna start the first 3 buildings?
Because this SIP approval is for every single phase of this development, and we need 2 access points
Do we wanna-
designed.
And you will have 2 access points.
But we have not seen them, which is another reason why we cannot approve this SIP tonight.
I'm not gonna get,
Do we wanna forget about the Getson access, cause we know we can get the other access, and move forward with the full plans and totally forget about the railroad crossing?
I think that would be up to you, but Naomi just stated that your eggs might be better in that basket, designing your 2 Lincoln Street access points.
But is the city okay with it, those being our 2 accesses, and we don't even work towards the railroad one?
That
You're asking us
hasn't
to
been the
spend
point.
money on this access, spend money on this one, and it's a lot of money on both ends to get them both done.
okay, I'm gonna read from I think this is the developer's agreement, or it could be the ordinance. It says, "The city and the developers agree the best practice provides secondary access to and from the development for residential visitors, secondary access. Such secondary access shall adhere to the normal street standards for connections, public right-of-way, da-da-da. The city and the developer agrees that in good faith to seek approval and installation of public railroad crossing. If the approved railroad crossing would likely be installed as part of phase 2, not contingent upon the state Wisconsin approving a public crossing at Getson. If the state does not approve the public crossing at Getson, the developer agrees to plan a secondary access point along South Lincoln Street as shown as the GDP site plan." That's what it says. If they don't approve Getson, we have to design that secondary access. It doesn't say we have to design the secondary access now and then come back, if they approve Getson, now we gotta go design Getson, and we gotta wait for all that before we can start phase 1.
This
What
is
it
the,
does.
also, we had a memorandum of understanding between the city, ourselves, and the DOT, is what Paul just described. So now it sounds like we're abandoning that and saying you have to have 2 access. It's fine, we'll abandon Getson. That's not what the city has said they wanted this whole time. The city has wanted us to go through Getson. It goes through the residential, it's easier to get to the schools, it's easier for residents to go that way. If Lincoln was, the fire department at that time, was a different chief, but they wanted that one, they wanted it that way in case Lincoln Street had a major emergency and was completely shut down, then both those accesses would be shut down, and everybody would be landlocked. That's why they wanted us to go to Getson. Sounds like you want us to abandon that now, that's fine. We're just gonna abandon Getson, we're gonna do 2 accesses.
We're not asking you to abandon any of your plans. We're just asking you to provide 2 designs, 2 access points
But
for
that's
this
not-
SIP.
That's not what the approach has been to now. The approach has been to get Lincoln Street in and get by the time, before you provide occupancy on a single building, one of the other 2 accesses has to be approved for the second. Because we've all known the railroad crossing is gonna take a very long time. There's no way we can wait for these entire plans to be approved for Getson. It's gonna stop this project for 2 to 3 years if we wait for that. So if I fully design the second access point, it's fine, I'm gonna do it. If I do that, I'm abandoning Getson Street because it's not worth the effort. And that's not what the approach has been, that's not what the memorandum of understanding has said to this point. We have a written memorandum of understanding between ourselves, the city, and the DOT. That's not what it says.
If you look at the MOU, it says the developer shall construct a temporary access to the development off of Lincoln Street for use during the construction phase. The developer shall refrain from occupying any of the residential units until a secondary permanent access, either via a public railroad crossing into Getson Street or an alternative public access north of Deer Road from Lincoln Street is provided. So to what Ryan is saying, the MOU says they would have a temporary access during construction, and prior to occupancy, they would have to have a second permanent access, whether that's at Getson or off of North
I
Lincoln
would love to
Street.
come back to Plan Commission with that second access design when we know for sure which one it is. We will not get occupancy on any building until that second access is fully designed, fully approved, ready to go in. But I can't do it at this point, and it's gonna stop the project.
As Naomi mentioned, though, there is staff that is looking for the design of that intersection, whether it be temporary or permanent. I know electric needs to see a design of it.
Aren't we gonna bury that there?
Yeah, it's being buried.
Yeah, that'll be buried, correct? We voted on
He just needs to stay plenty away from the area. BZ's very great to work with. I'll show him exactly where to stay away from.
I guess as long as we feel comfortable that, I mean, I was focusing on the intent of having 2 accesses to phase 1. And I don't see 2 right now. I don't see 2.
Do that front one now.
All right, we'll do the front one.
Do we have the main intersection completely
I submitted
designed?
that to Art
Was that last week?
and his only comments back a couple days ago that the city was copied on was about pavement markings.
So BZ also didn't see that one, and,
Well, then the city needs to distribute it.
well, maybe he has now, that's only been a week. The last time I spoke with him last week, he had not seen it. And he needs that as well, because he's got changes to place over there too, with the, potentially, because I don't know if he does, because there's turn lanes and whatnot that may or may not be required by DOT.
It's gonna be temporary for 2 years until we make a decision on Getson, exactly
Well,
right.
No, I'm talking about the main intersection.
What's that?
I'm talking about the main intersection, Deer
Main
Road,
intersection,
Deer
yeah.
Road.
That'll be done before we occupy.
I mean, is it fully designed?
Yes.
And that will be a temporary one while we're building it, it'll be 2, because
So is that the one
at some point
that,
when we're building Creekside Boulevard, when they're building these, hopefully they're building these 2 units in the clubhouse, they'll be coming in the temporary access.
so was that last week sent to DOT as well? Okay, well, that's what I'm saying. BZ or us, we haven't seen that yet. One of his main concerns is focusing on the design itself, realizing what he has to do for all of his things. There's the actual electric lot with the fence, and they got a lot of difficult situations there they gotta figure out. It's a timeline of up to a year just for him to get his stuff completed is what, roughly, is what we're hearing. That's also upwards of $1 million. I'm not accurate on exactly how much, but he's got major concerns with how that's gonna get done and what he's gotta do and how he needs to schedule it. And, so that's just one of our drawbacks as well, so.
When I was
So-
got
so-
special engineering license, me and Ryan are signing these drawings. Getson's a better opportunity, better location, cost the developer more money. But you're talking about access points that are like 500-600 feet apart on Lincoln. That's the secondary access. Getson's a much better secondary access for everybody. And why don't we plan with what's best thing for the city and best thing, I'm more comfortable with that than the other one. And If it doesn't go, if we have to go back and do something different at the temporary access, we will. I mean, I don't, because if they install the electric facilities based on that being a permanent one, a secondary one in Lincoln, and we get Getson, do we have to move it then? And then we're just moving it again.
No, I get that. I understand you wouldn't wanna, design something and then put it somewhere else or not use it. I get that. I was talking about the main entrance that is going to be needed, so that design wasn't completed and as far as we know, not approved by DOT yet. So that's one thing. The second thing would be the second entrance. So the second entrance, as you stated earlier, if Getson is not an option and you, and then you come back and design
Permanent.
the permanent one on 67, a second one, that still has to be approved by DOT, and us. And also with that, again, with the utilities that we've already gone through. So at the time that we decide, or you decide, Getson's no longer a location and it's the secondary on 67, then utilities has to schedule their work, and that's where the timeline, I don't know where you are at that point in your construction, but it would be another 9 months or whatever. So, you know, I don't know if that's not our concern, that's your concern. If you're ready to open and you can't because there's gonna be 9 months of electric work or whatever. But the two entrances is.
I just don't like doing things and throwing it away. You know, designing something that we're gonna throw away, it takes a lot of time and effort to design that. And if we have to do it later on, we'll have the time and we'll have to do it, but then we're not gonna use Getson. We got a ditch crossing, we're probably gonna have some kind of box culvert in there. That's gonna be expensive crossing. So, I don't wanna design two of them.
I would, you know, I guess me personally, my opinion is that, that one, I guess, is one I would still like to see pursued, but again, that's just me. But if it doesn't go through, which we don't know about, then, you know, it's gonna take some time, then isn't DOT, like Naomi just said, are they gonna require like a left turn lane and a median or something like that on this other access point that's currently shown as temporary?
Yeah, we talked to them about that, but we haven't designed that because we don't think it's gonna go. It's gonna be you got one across the interstate that's not most desirable intersection either, and I don't wanna have another one over here.
Yeah, and then
I'm signing on these things, and so is Ryan, and
right now, this is showing us 26 feet wide. It's pretty narrow. I mean, if this is going to be a permanent, even, I guess, a temporary, even for the first two buildings, is that enough for?
No, it's
emergency
not.
response?
It's been very clearly presented, that's temporary for during construction.
yeah.
That cannot be a permanent access, that is not the permanent access.
But we could make it wider.
We can, and it's a part, if it goes and that becomes the permanent, it's gonna be wider, it's gonna be turn lanes, there's gonna be a median in Lincoln.
I think
That all is gonna happen, and we'll just go that route. We're gonna abandon Getson, we're gonna go that route. So I'm
We
gonna
don't
revise
wanna
the plans,
abandon
we're gonna
Getson.
go
The
that
city
route.
doesn't wanna abandon Getson.
I don't really wanna, I mean, that's, again, I don't know, it's up to the plan commission and council, but I think Getson is a good secondary entrance.
I agree.
For all the reasons that you mentioned about, you know, if there is a big incident on 67 on Lincoln Street, now both of your critical,
Yeah.
your points are taken out.
You know, and I think when we looked at that, and when you look at a left-hand turn lane, you may have to restrict somebody else. You got people across, we got 7 or 8 driveways right across the street there. Now we gotta extend medians, and they're gonna have people, you know, how many U-turns you get on the other side? Joel's not here. How many U-turns you see on the other side coming out of Love's, you know?
Which you can understand why we wanna know what that design looks like.
Yeah, it's gonna look bad. It's gonna look bad. But, you know, we have to do what we have to do. But we like Getson better. It's more expensive for everybody, not the city, but more expensive for the developers. They understand what they're doing, and they understand. But that's gonna be a temporary access point during construction. We got 2 to 2.5 years. And we think in a year from now, we'll know where Getson's going. So, and if we have to then take a year to get that other one fixed before they get occupancy, we'll redesign that intersection to get it approved and built. But to design it now and to go through all that DOT submittal process just for something that probably not gonna happen, we nobody wants to happen. It just costs us another 6 months.
Allison, do you think that, if we table this and try to bring it back on November 3rd, you think that would be possible if you could get together and settle some of the things that were brought up tonight that doesn't seem like we're gonna be able to do anything tonight to come up with a good answer here, that's my opinion. And, just from Naomi and Michael, do you think there'd be enough time to go through this and meet with them if it takes 2 meetings, 3 meetings, whatever? Just to get it ironed out so the next time they come back, we're all on the same page?
Yeah, we'd love to do that.
Yeah,
We're
it
available.
depends on when we get the
You're
plans.
available? Well,
Available every day.
okay. Then,
But the one thing, just so we're clear before we leave, everybody's in agreement that Getson is what we're shooting for, and this is temporary until we know we're not gonna get Getson. Because that, I don't wanna say it's a deal breaker, but that costs us 4 to 6 months. We gotta go back, get DOT approval on that.
And that's what that
That's
memorandum
what the
said too.
developer agreement, I think, the ordinance
Chief,
is-
what is your, you'd rather see Getson, I'm thinking, right? Or-
I'd rather see Getson. The only thing that I'm worried about is if it takes 18 months for you to get a denial on Getson, are you gonna have enough time to get the other one designed,
Well-
planned before you get occupancy? So we have 2 entrances that, 2 entrance exits in and out of the.
Although we're paying all the bills, the city is the one has to apply for the access of Getson.
I mean, I prefer Getson all day long.
So the city you've been working on this for several months and we're not,
Are we any closer on that, or?
we need the city to get a little excited about this too, so.
Well, we just had a conversation with the railroad probably 2 weeks ago, Matt, I'd say, so the council talked about the railroad crossing options. The railroad has said we have to close at least one crossing if we want to add another one. The council talked about potentially closing South Wisconsin Street. There was some pushback from residents. The council wanted more time to think about it and wanted to get traffic counts of Mackenzie, which is right next to Centralia. The problem is it's currently under construction, so we can't get traffic counts on the road while it's closed. So it's supposed to be finished up here by end of October-ish, Matt? Is that?
Yeah, they're doing final paving tomorrow,
Yeah.
and hopefully next week we'll get.
So as soon as it's open, we'll have traffic counts done on basically every crossing in the city, so the council can look at what crossing, the traffic counts in those crossings and make a decision whether they want to close one of those, don't want to close any of them, and want to fight the state on just getting the approval for Getson, but that's where we're at on that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, our conversation with the railroad, they didn't seem super accommodating to trying to, find an alternative around that. They said they were potentially open to, if we would agree to an MOU to share maintenance costs and liability, that might change the analysis, but they weren't super, committed to that. And that's part of the reason why they were asking for the design of the railroad to talk about what the maintenance costs would be. And so, anyway, that's where we're at with the crossing. So we'll be able to start moving forward more once we can get those traffic counts.
It's been hard for us to schedule meetings with them. I mean, we ask for availability, and they offer availability, and we're like, okay, we'll choose their earliest date, and then that date passes before we even get a response. So there's been some challenges getting in front of them. Right now, we're kind of waiting for them to give us some information on what we may need to do in order to avoid having to eliminate a secondary crossing, or another crossing.
Well, like I said, me and Ryan are available any day. Let's see if we can get this figured out.
I mean, I really don't, it doesn't make logical sense to say I have to have a fully secondary. It's public record that we cannot get occupancy without a second approved access. It just doesn't make sense to say these plans cannot come back before you before a second access is fully designed.
And Ryan, I'm just asking this as a general question. Is there a sort of an intermediate, and maybe Naomi can answer this question, is there an intermediate where you can show very rough schematic design of what that might look like, just as a rough idea without having to fully develop all the detail and the cross sections, et cetera?
Yeah, it's already in the DOT, TIA, the traffic impact analysis says what the turn lanes are, says what medians they require, it's all in there already.
Yeah, TIA is just not the design, the TIA is not the easy part, but the designer, this one was 70 pages, right? The one we got now.
So
So you're looking at another,
could
you know,
you,
everybody wants Getson, so you're asking us to spin our wheels and design something nobody wants. We
Could
may
you
need
lay-
it, we may
Sorry.
have to design it, but why are we doing it now?
could you lay out what the DOT recommends or is requiring for permanent access?
If we
And-
did the TIA, you got a copy of the TIA.
No, on the plan set, I mean, so we can see what that looks like as 3 lanes wide and the proper turning radius at the corners. And so that BZ can have some sort of indication of what that potentially could be, and maybe he can,
I talked to
you know.
BZ, you got facilities there now, they're all on poles. See, he's not going underground
He
anymore.
is. Paul, he's going underground.
Huh?
He's going underground.
Is he gonna go underground?
Yes.
Well,
Yep.
so no.
Agreed on that.
so, well, let's talk to him. Let's see if
Well-
it makes a difference to him before we.
You know, I
we're
think
all
I'd
assuming it's
also
gonna
like
make
to
a
see
difference,
it.
And I don't think it is. But if we had to move them, we'd have to move them.
Well, I guess I'm just asking to show the three wide, you don't have to give me grades or anything, but to meet the requirements of the DOT, what does that look like on the site plan? We don't see that here.
Well, TI talks about turn lanes and storage distance and
Can,
stuff.
can we see that? Can we see that? Then we at least have a view, a bird's eye view of the extent of what that looks like for that turning movement?
Well, you still gotta do, you gotta do the survey, you gotta do all the other stuff, you gotta design it, you can't just sketch it with crayons, you know, you gotta put some thought into it. Whatever.
It sounds like it would be helpful to get clarification from BZ on what exact impact, you know, it could have in terms of if there's a difference between temporary and permanent, so I think that's something to talk more with BZ about.
So,
Any other comments, questions?
Only question and comment for Allison, and I think more so Allison. I know normally when we do a submittal, it's a month in advance before the next, you know, before it gets on the agenda, but that shouldn't be an issue going forward because it's already been submitted, now we're just in the review phase. So, you know, assuming when it's ready to be discussed, it'll be on the next planning commission agenda, no matter what, you know,
Yep.
no matter when that is.
Yes, yep, Adam, you're correct. We will just need to get the plans in, have adequate staff time to review. As soon as that happens, we'll get it back to you.
all right, I'd make a motion to table it until Allison and the engineering group have a chance to look at it and bring it before us with what we're actually looking at is what they wanted and what you agree to do.
I'll second that.
We appreciate all the help.
We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any comments?
I guess I'm just gonna take a quick second just to say, and I do wanna reiterate that, you know, we obviously are excited about this project, everybody is, so, we know you guys have been working really hard, Ryan, and Paul, so please don't, misinterpret the city engineer or anybody from staff as, you know, trying to be difficult. Obviously, they're looking out for the best interest of the city or what they perceive to be the best interest of the city, and we know you guys are, you know, you want what's best too, so it's just, I think we've made a lot of progress. Obviously, we've got some additional room to go, but we're definitely getting close. And I do also want to just clarify that when Geronimi Creekside reached out about trying to get this on tonight's agenda, and they talked about submitting this a month ago, you know, our hope had been that the first round or the first submittal that they'd given would have been really close, and that therefore, if there had to be a couple additional changes, that they could make those changes and get them, so that tonight you'd be, right there. And so I just want to explain why Ryan submitted that most recent submittal, was because that's something we had talked about, which was, hey, once you get some of the preliminary comments back, try to get us the best version of it you can. So I just don't want there to be a perception that Creekside, submitting something, closer to the meeting was somehow, sort of out of bounds or something, because that's something we had talked about them doing to, again, try to get this approved as soon as possible, so.
Thank you, Adam. Any other comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Are there any general discussion items?
Just a couple of things. We've been really exceptionally busy in the zoning office, but we are working, actually Afton's working on a plan commission spreadsheet for, I think we talked about this a few months ago, getting all plan commission items on that spreadsheet, seeing where they're at, once they're closed, giving us a good tracking ability to be able to keep an eye on those and be able to provide you with monthly updates on where projects are at in the city. So we'll have that probably done by our next plan commission meeting. And then, I don't know if I can disclose this, hopefully I can, but there is someone under contract on the Cook Farm, and so that's really exciting. I met with the development firm this week, and it looks like they are aiming for an all single-family housing development. So more to come on that in the future, but we're excited.
We do have a meeting scheduled for October 17th. It sounds like November 3rd is
We
also.
won't have anything on October 17th.
Oh, yes. There's nothing on the 17th?
No, everything will be moved to November.
Okay. All righty. Sounds good. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned.